This is a story that my grandmother told when I was a kid in India, and I realized that it keeps popping up in various contexts. So it goes like this. There's this elephant who walks into a village square, and there are these blind men who don't know what it is, and they are very curious. So they go near it, and they start touching it, and which is the forward click here, there. Yeah, so one of these blind men, he touches the leg of the elephant and he says, it feels like a tree trunk. And another one, he touches the trunk of the elephant and he says, it actually feels like a snake. And a third one, he touches the tusks of the elephant and he says, oh, this is sharp. It feels like a dagger. And one more touches the ear of the elephant and he says, oh, this feels like a fan. And one touches the tail, he says, this feels like a rope. And another one touches the stomach of the elephant, and he says, this is like a solid wall. So all of these men, they are touching different parts of this elephant, and they are all right. Each of those parts feels like that, but they don't yet get a sense of the whole elephant. So why am I telling you this story now? I like the story, but also because of the relevance to the public cloud and how it is perceived, especially within an enterprise. Yeah, so welcome to this talk on flirting with the public cloud. The challenges that are faced by large enterprises. Basically, when I joined ING about 4 years ago, I came from a smaller company, a startup scale-up. I was head of engineering, where we ran production loads on the public cloud on AWS, quite successfully for over 4 years. And when I came into ING, I saw that they were not using the public cloud. They had their on-premise, everything was deployed on-premise. And I started wondering why, because I had great experience with the public cloud. You know, everything works smoothly. You can scale up, scale down, do all of those cool things. But we were not yet using it in ING. Then I started digging into why is this? You know, are they just averse to change so much, or are there more reasons? And this talk is more or less a summary of all the reasons that I found, and quite valid reasons as well. First, let's look at a bit of what is the current situation. At least in Europe, I looked up for large enterprises. There's about 41% who say that they are using the public cloud. And using in what way? Most of them are using it for emails or file storage and those kind of things. And very few, like less than 25%, are using it for actual putting their production loads or applications in the public cloud. So this is quite a low number, and I would like to go into, why is this? But firstly, is it really a problem if enterprises do not use the public cloud? You know, what are enterprises trying to achieve? Yeah, they are trying to also deliver business value, capture market share, or expand or increase their market share. And they're operating in an environment which is more and more crowded with like other smaller startups or fintechs. If you talk about regulated enterprises, health and finance, those are the two big things that are highly regulated. And you have a lot of smaller tech companies coming into those spaces. And so those players, the smaller players, they start with ground zero, so they are able to move fast into newer technologies, like the public cloud. They are able to take advantage of the infrastructure, things that are available. But for an enterprise, this is not yet the case. They are not yet doing that. And then there is the opportunity, right? There is the promise of the public cloud. There is a hype. It's cool. Everybody's using. We're talking about cloud native. And large enterprises, maybe they also should look into this because they want to stay with it and keep innovating faster. And infrastructure is not really something that they want to build everything themselves. It's not part of their core business value. So maybe it's a thing that they can consider to add in order to move faster. So this is the context for enterprises. And then I would like to, maybe most of you know of this because the public cloud has been around for really long, but I'll quickly summarize what are all the benefits, and also from an enterprise's point of view. So one of the first things is it's a very mature service. It's infrastructure as a service offered for over 12 years, and there is a lot out there in the public cloud. So the extensive offering, maybe originally it started with just like compute instances or a database, managed database, and so on. But now there's over 200, 250 services, including machine learning, pre-built models, and all of that. So there's quite a lot to choose from, quite a lot of things that are done for you out of the box. And the DevOps experience is really great. It's smooth. The consoles of these public cloud vendors, they are very easy to use, and as a developer, you can just click and collect. You basically just ask for any of these services that you want, and you have it. Then on the runtime side of things, the public cloud, the biggest promise is scalability on demand. So you don't need to make error-prone predictions of how big your traffic is going to be. You can actually set up rules on your load balancer to say, I want to scale to 200 instances between this time window, and I want to scale down after. And these are all not easy to achieve within an enterprise. It's out there. It's already been done by cloud providers, so you might want to take advantage of this as well as an enterprise, as a way of also cost optimizations. Quick provisioning. Now, this is a thing that, in the old enterprise world, you might have to, as a developer, requisition for a new VM or a new server and wait for weeks or months in order to get it. Maybe I'm describing something from way back. Maybe everybody is beyond that now. But typically, this is a scenario you're coming from within the enterprise. And it's such a fresh outlook to say, I can click on a console and just get a database of whatever size I want, or servers, and so on. And lastly, the global reach. Cloud providers, basically, they have set up data centers all over the world, and enterprises can take advantage of this as well. There is multi-availability zones, so not only for reaching your customer base, being closer to them, so to lower the network latency, but also for avoiding for disaster recovery exercises and things like that. You have all these availability zones that you can take advantage of. So I think this is really a good thing that enterprises can and must look into in order to optimize their operations and how they innovate further with their applications. Yeah, particularly this opportunity to be close to the global customers. For an enterprise, typically you have on-premise. That means you have data centers in 1 or 2 countries. And the cloud providers give you an opportunity to be in a lot of different places. And that's a nice thing to have. And yet, not everyone is going there. Not everyone is looking into the cloud seriously for their production systems. So why is that? There are quite a lot of challenges that the enterprises face, especially because of regulations. But I'd like to walk through, first, who are the stakeholders within an enterprise in order to make this decision to go to the public cloud. So the enterprise itself and its shareholders, they want something. They want to increase their market share, make their offering to the customer, and they want to do it in an optimal way. They also have to take into account that they already have hardware and on-premise stuff that they need to take into account this when they want to move stuff to the public cloud. Then customers. So the customer does not really care whether you're running on a machine here, on your premise, or on the cloud. What you really want is that your data is secure. Can a bank guarantee that my data will not be leaked? My privacy is guaranteed. That's what a customer is typically interested in. And then employees of an enterprise. So with a small company, you have a smaller set of people who are all maybe on the same page with technology and stuff. But with an enterprise, you have like 50,000 plus employees or whatever, and there are different levels of understanding of this public cloud in particular. So you have developers who may want it. They love this DevOps experience. They can't wait to get on it. And then you have business folks who are like, yeah, I don't really care. I just want this functionality to be built and deployed. Don't tell me you're going to take another 6 months to investigate new infrastructure options. So there are a lot of people you need to convince and take along in this decision. The society, enterprise has a sort of responsibility to the society because it has a brand image, and as a healthcare enterprise or a finance enterprise, you want to also project the image that you're treating the data of the customers securely. And the society typically has this view that if my data is on the cloud, maybe it is less secure. So you need to work on making that all clear to the society as well. And finally, the regulators. So this is a big group that most other types of industries do not have to worry about, but regulated industries do need to worry about. They have a say in where you run your stuff, where you run your applications. So a short look at what are these regulated data and the regulation types. You have basically your personal information, profile data, healthcare, employment, financial transactions. All of these kind of data is regulated. And what are the types of regulations? You have all around data privacy, like GDPR and various other laws. And then you have data retention, which is how long can you keep someone's data, and how long must you keep it for legal reasons. So there's two ends of it. And then data residency, which is about some countries have this rule that geographically this data must not leave my country's borders. So those are also regulations you need to take into account. And antitrust laws are things like to avoid a monopoly or one large or two large companies having the entire market share of stuff. How is it related in this cloud decision? Like if all the financial companies of Europe decide to go on one of the cloud providers, this law is there to prevent that, because then you want to make sure that if that provider goes down, the whole of business of Europe, it should not go down, right? So that is kind of the antitrust laws. And then you have also industry-specific, more detailed regulations for healthcare and finance. Okay, there are all these laws and rules, but what do the regulators ask the enterprise when they talk about this public cloud? Enterprise says, okay, I'm considering going to the public cloud. So the regulator asks, where is your data? Are you in full control of your data? And even if you're on-premise, you know where all your data is. It's in your own data centers. But if you're in the cloud, maybe you're in a couple of places, and you need to have a clear picture of it at all times. And then they want the right to inspect and audit the infrastructure. Again, for this, you need to make deals with the cloud providers in order to provide that right to inspect from the regulators. And you need to have a clear exit strategy. Because if something happens and you want to leave that cloud provider, do you have it planned upfront? So these are things you need to have clearly in your mind before you think of going to the cloud. Now we talked about all the other stuff around the enterprise, and then we come to the enterprise IT landscape itself. So there are architectural challenges within the enterprise which you want to look into for going to the cloud. So the first question, maybe you've also thought about this question a lot for one application or a bunch of applications yourself. Can all my applications run on the cloud? Yeah, so it depends, like everything in architecture, right? So it depends on a bunch of criteria, and it depends on the apps themselves. Maybe there are some applications that are totally not suitable for running on the cloud. They are written in a monolithical way. There is only one server on which they can run. You cannot distribute it. Or maybe you have like terabytes of data collected over the last 30 years, and you don't really want, or it's not cost effective, to move that into the cloud. So there could be certain of these criteria for which you say, no, I don't want to move these applications into the cloud. And on the other hand, there could be applications where there is no sensitive data. It's a marketing website. You want to run campaigns. And this you can trivially move into the cloud. You can take advantage of what is offered in the cloud. So one of the key things to consider is also, how optimal is it? Are you going to make a cost benefit when you move an application into the cloud? And you also have to consider re-architecting, but I'll come to that in a moment. Say lift and shift one more time. Imagine Samuel Jackson's voice saying it. That sounds a lot cooler than mine. So yeah, I don't think it's really a good idea to lift and shift, because firstly, you're going to the cloud for a reason. You want to enjoy all the benefits of the scalable, distributed platform and everything. So just lifting and shifting as it is, yeah, maybe that's not going to give you all those benefits. You could do it if you have very good reasons. But you must consider re-architecting your application and make it more distributable, let's say. And that could take the form of scaling horizontally on VMs, or it could be on containers, but you need to think and make a well-thought-out decision on each application. And must I containerize? Yeah, I think you can. It's a cool thing to go to, but it's not an absolute must. Right? In my previous job for the EdTech company, we ran quite successfully for all the years with just VMs. So it's not that cloud equals containers. You need to think of both, and they are both independent decisions to make. And then for a large enterprise with like 300 plus applications, you need to have a migration strategy on a few dimensions, right? One is which of the applications are going to be migrated at all to the cloud, and the other is for an application, if it's serving millions of customers, then are you going to do a big bang migration for everyone? Or because you don't have the choice that I will shut down everything and after 3 months I have a new version that will run on the cloud. 3 months, actually 3 quarters. But you don't have that choice. You're going to have to do it while it is running. So this means you need to have a more robust migration strategy. And that basically means that you can have something like I move only the web servers to the cloud and the databases remain on-premise. That could be one way of doing it. Or you move everything into the cloud, but then start routing like 5% of your traffic, like canary releases, right? You start routing smaller portions of your traffic to the cloud. And yeah, so any of these, but you need to think it through, and per application, what is best suited for that. That's what you need to do. And some lower level technical challenges and choices as well after these architectural considerations. A pipeline, right? No cat in it, but CI/CD pipeline. You need to have, I think even for your own on-premise operations, this is best. You need to have an automated pipeline and code coverage, a lot of tests in your pipeline. If you don't have that, it's going to be difficult, especially with the auditors and the regulators. You need to not only have secure secure software, but you need to be able to prove that you have tested that it is secure. And that's what you do in this pipeline. And not only that, but including that. Hello? No? Doesn't want to move forward? Okay, there we go. So another choice you have to make in the public cloud is whether you want to bring your own services or use managed services. For an enterprise particularly, you might say, oh, I have a lot of Oracle licenses, Oracle databases. I want to use those, reuse them. So maybe you want to bring your own database. Or you want to say that, I want to take advantage of the managed databases in the cloud, so I want to use something there. Again, per application, you might have to make these choices. Is it your own or managed Kubernetes, or your own OpenShift version, or something else, right? Someone in the crowd I know who has done these choices. Okay, then the other thing to note is that when you're running on your own premise, you have freedom over the lifecycle management of your underlying OS and libraries. But in the public cloud, you need to follow the rhythm of the cloud provider. Basically, they say, in 6 months, I'm going to sunset version X. So you need to be off of that version in 6 months. And this can be quite daunting for enterprises because you're used to a longer cycle, and I will do it in 2 years, but yeah, maybe you need to keep that in mind to be able to move at the speed that the provider demands. Then comes the question of which public cloud. There's quite a lot of choice again over there. The big players are Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, Azure. And there is also a Europe-based cloud, the Fuga cloud. You can choose from among these. But for an enterprise, it's not as simple like a startup, right? You can't say, oh, I pick one of them, they all have equivalent services, I'll just go with it. That's not the case, because there are hundreds of teams, and each team says, hey, I am used to the Google Cloud, I've done it in my previous job, and I want to do that. And some other team says, no, Azure is best, or someone else says AWS is best. And you let them all make their own choices within an enterprise. Because then you could really get into a multi-cloud mess. Because then you have every team goes wherever they want, and you don't have much control. And you have to answer to the regulators as well. So it's best to have some kind of a corporate or enterprise level strategy for which cloud. Maybe you don't want to pick one, maybe you want to pick a couple of them, but also have clear guidelines on which one you're choosing and for what reasons. And what does this mean in terms of what your landscape will look like in the end? It is basically going to end up as a hybrid situation, which is some stuff running on-premise and some stuff running on one or two cloud providers' setups. So this is the most practical, I think, for most enterprises, because you also have the whole migration, which is going to take a long time for all your applications, and some of them will never move out of their on-premise setup, so they are going to always be a mix. For completeness, I'm going to talk about cloud agnostic. I really don't like the term cloud agnostic, but there are a lot of people who think or like to build a layer within the enterprise to say that, I want to abstract away the clouds. Yeah, you're spending a lot of time and energy abstracting, writing this abstraction layer and stuff that the cloud providers have already done. You need to provide a console, you need to provide a quick provisioning on that layer. And at runtime, developers still need control of which machine or which cloud they're running on if they want to debug or check anything. So I don't think cloud agnostic is a good idea, but it's a personal opinion, of course. Hybrid, the silver bullet, right? So for hybrid, I just want to show what could a hybrid setup look like. This is what the enterprise setup started out to be. There is an enterprise network boundary, a gateway, and all your customers access your applications through this gateway. And then you introduce a couple of different cloud providers. So some of the applications you move into these cloud X, cloud Y, wherever. One of the key things is all your applications still need to talk to each other. Right? The inter-app communication still needs to go on, whether they are running on-premise or on the cloud or across. So you need to negotiate, as an enterprise, deals with the cloud providers to have a trusted connection between the cloud provider and you for this inter-app communication to happen over a secure network. So you don't want that to go over a public connection, because then you're introducing something that was not there, that was solved very well within your network boundary, so you need to keep that. Okay, that's mostly about how you want to get to the cloud, what are all the things you want to consider. So let's say we are done flirting with the cloud and we want to move to the next base. I want to say a few things on this. Basically, you need to have a long-term vision and patience, because with the scope of the number of applications in the enterprise, it's not going to happen in a short term. It's not overnight, it's not in 2 months. So you need to stay in there for the long term and keep the strategy and be clear. You need to train and socialize. So all the different stakeholders, this is the cloud is considered like the elephant, and all the stakeholders have different understanding. You need to bring them all to one common level of understanding. And don't be afraid to re-architect where needed, of course. So these are, I would say, the key things that you could take away for this kind of migration. And coming back to my elephant, you need to zoom out. So all these guys were looking at only the individual parts. So you think of, the people in finance, they look at only the cost factor, or the developers are looking only at the DevOps experience factor of the cloud. So you need to look at all of these factors. Everything is relevant. Each is a perspective, and each is a valid perspective. But you need to combine all of this, take into account all these perspectives. And the whole elephant is somewhat bigger than the sum of its parts. Thank you.